set foot on an NBA court, Michael Jordan dominated his sport like few athletes ever had.
You've been reading about a man, Greg. Today, I consider myself the luckiest man on the face of the earth.
It's one small step for man, one giant leap for mankind.
It was beautiful, historical, artistically subtle in a way that science can't capture, and I found it fascinating.
There is an indefinable, mysterious power that pervades everything. I feel it, though I do not see it.
I have a dream that one day this nation will rise up, live out the true meaning of its creed.
All right, that's a good question. Legacy, what will yours be? Welcome to Journey. Hey guys, I am Andy. I'm the high school guys small group leader. That was way more exciting than I thought that was going to be. I love getting a chance to hang out with a small group of high school young men, and I'm really honored to get to talk to all of you guys tonight. As you see, we are starting the Legacy series, Living a Life That Outlives Me, and this is a really important thing for high school students to wrestle with, and middle school students as well. And it's kind of fun that I get to stand on this stage after last Wednesday and Sunday when messages were very much already kind of gearing this direction. Mr. Allen last week challenged us on fighting for contentment and knowing needs and wants and understanding who we are and letting ourselves be solidly grounded for spiritual warfare that's coming. All that kind of stuff is so important. Hopefully you guys enjoyed good discussions in your small groups over that. And then on Sunday, Pastor Steve stood on the stage and he asked all of the grown-ups in the room, do you have a Sunday-only faith? Who was here on Sunday? Were you guys? Okay, perfect. That is a good challenge, and I'll give you a little disclaimer. Essentially, I'm asking you that same question tonight. But first, let's just kind of break it down and start talking about what legacy is. So, is legacy like a word that's in your vocabulary? Do you guys talk about legacy a lot? When Pastor Lance asked me if I would speak, I'm like, absolutely. What's the Legacy series? And when he explained it, I'm like, oh, yeah, that's really cool, and I'm excited to talk about that. What about the word reputation? Does that seem to fit a little bit more in your world? Legacy, how about that? Legacy and reputation have a lot in common, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit, but reputation, like when you go to school, you know the people that have the reputation of being the class clowns, right? Or the athletes. You might know what your reputation is, and maybe it's a good thing. I don't know. I hope it is. Legacy is going to be kind of like that. Reputation and legacy are all about how we are known, and I am getting some texts probably from people at work right now, so I'm going to turn that down. That's awesome. It's all about how we're known, but there's a difference. Reputation is something you have the ability to manage right now. You can actually have a reputation at home that's different than your reputation at school, which could be different than your reputation at work. It's something that you can actually actively be shaping right now. Legacy, you don't really get that option. Legacy, it's going to be something that's kind of set when we are dead. We're not going to be able to manage it as much anymore. So as we're thinking through what legacy and reputation are, I want us just to be thinking about who are we. Now, the word legacy, do you think you're going to find that in the Bible anywhere? Probably, no. It's actually not in the Bible, believe it or not. It's not a concept that is mentioned in there. You might find a translation that uses the word legacy, but that's not really a common concept. But what is common in the Bible is this idea of bearing fruit. So we all know what fruit is. Go to the grocery store and you see all kinds of fruit. Someone call out your favorite fruit. What is it? Pineapple, strawberries, ooh, bananas, passion fruit, ooh, very good. So those are actually not the kind of fruit that we're talking about. But just like an apple tree bears apples, you can look at a tree and not know what kind of tree it is until all of a sudden it just starts growing oranges. And then all of a sudden you're like, oh, okay, that's an orange tree. You see, by our fruit, we are known. By a tree's fruit, it is known. And so there's lots of different kinds of fruit that is mentioned in the Bible. A very famous passage is going to be Galatians 5:22. You guys probably know this one. It's on the screen right here behind me, and this is known as the fruit of the Spirit. Galatians says, but the Holy Spirit produces this kind of fruit in our lives: love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. There is no law against these things. The concept of this fruit of the Spirit is that when we have this relationship with God, our lives will naturally produce behaviors like this. How many of you want to be around someone who's loving and joyful and kind and self-controlled? Those are the kind of people we want to be around. Who wants to be that? I think I'd rather be around people that than sometimes be that, because it's a lot of work, maybe. But yeah, these are the fruits that our lives can produce when we have a relationship with Jesus and he's at work in us. Can you have bad fruit? Well, yeah, you actually can. There's another verse right here that we're going to read about from the book of Matthew. And in it, Jesus is talking, and he says, watch out for false prophets. He's talking about people right now, but then he's going to start talking about fruit analogies. He says, false prophets come to you in sheep's clothing, but inwardly they are ferocious wolves. Keep going. By their fruit you will recognize them. Do people pick grapes from thorn bushes? The answer is assumed to be no. Or figs from thistles? Again, the answer is no. Likewise, every good tree bears good fruit, but a bad tree bears bad fruit. A good tree cannot bear bad fruit, and a bad tree cannot bear good fruit. And every tree that it does not bear good fruit is cut down and thrown into the fire. And then he ends again with saying, thus by their fruit you will recognize them. So is he talking about plants that are actually cut down and chopped and burned? Or is he talking about people? Which one? He's kind of using analogies. He's kind of talking about both, but he's talking about the fruit of our lives being good, like the fruit of the Spirit, or being bad. And we get to pick kind of how we want our fruit to be known. So if you want fruit in your life, if you want your life to demonstrate the working of God in you, and you want to bear fruit, how do you do that? I mean, that would probably be a helpful thing to understand in this whole concept of legacy. How would you bear fruit? Jesus gives us a really, really helpful answer. And in the book of John, a very, very good verse. If you guys haven't memorized a verse, this would be a really good verse to commit to memory. It's super easy. But in it, John, best friend of Jesus, says, or Jesus is actually the one saying it. John's quoting Jesus. And Jesus says, I am the vine, you are the branches. If you remain in me and I in you, you will bear much fruit. Apart from me, you can do nothing. So think about like an orange tree. I used to have an orange tree in my backyard growing up. Does the orange grow directly off of the trunk, or does it grow off of the branches? It grows off of the branches. So when Jesus was talking about a vine and branches, he's using the analogy of like a grapevine, which was way more common back then, but it's the same basic principle. The vine is not where the clusters of grapes grow. The branches that come off of the vine is where you find the fruit. Jesus is saying, I am the vine. I am the trunk of that orange tree. As long as you're connected to me and I'm connected to you, I'm in you and you're in me, then you're going to bear fruit. We are the extension of Jesus, and as long as we're connected to Jesus, our lives can bear fruit. However, if you sever that branch, what's going to happen to the fruit? It gets smashed. If you cut off the branch and there's fruit on the tree, does it continue to produce fruit? Typically, no. So Jesus is saying if we live our lives connected to him, we are going to always be able to bear fruit. Like that orange tree in my backyard, there was always oranges on it. Just go out there and pick one. Next year, the same branch has more oranges on it. But if we get separated or severed from Jesus, our lives cannot bear fruit. Does that conceptually make sense with oranges? Does that make sense with our relationship with Jesus? If not, we're going to keep talking about it, so no worries. So Jesus is essentially saying, hey, there's two attempts that you can take, two approaches to try to bear fruit. One, you can do it with me, or two, you can try to do it on your own. Which one do you think is going to be more effective? Oh, you guys are, come on. You can talk. With him. Perfect. Nice. You don't have to shout. Thank you, Isaac. But you guys can respond. I want you thinking along with me. So let's imagine that there are two scenarios here. One, you are trying to bear fruit on your own. Like you've just decided you're going to be a loving person and a kind person. You're not trusting Jesus' help. You just will yourself. You're going to be a fruit-bearing kind of person. And then another scenario over here, you decide, hey, I'm not really sure how best to do this fruit-bearing thing, but God, you got me and you're in me, and an apple tree doesn't have to sit there and think and work and pop out an apple. It just kind of happens, so I'm just going to stay connected to you, and we're going to see what happens. Of those two scenarios, the first one, you might have a chance to build a reputation. You actually can do some loving things and start to convince some people that you're loving. But think right now about that one person that you know in your world. Don't say it who it is. I don't need to know that, and no one else around you needs to know it. But think about someone who just irks you, someone who annoys you and bothers you, and maybe they're just mean. You got that person in your mind? We all have those people in our lives. Yep, we do. Imagine you just set out to love that person. Would that be easy? Probably not. And you might be able to do it for a little while until all of a sudden she goes and says that thing, and now all of a sudden the gloves are off and we're taking this out to the parking lot, right? Like it's hard to keep loving when someone is just so unlovable. But in your own strength, that's kind of all you have to work with. However, if you're connected to Jesus, if you're finding your identity in him, you're not your own person, you're not trying to bear this fruit, you're just connected with him and his powers at work in you, you can find that you can become a very loving, very patient, very, very kind, joyful person, even when you're surrounded by people that are just like that person you're imagining. That's the difference. That's a difference between these two. The nice thing about legacy, it's so like long term. When we get this relationship with Jesus right, our legacy lasts so much longer than just the limits of our lifetime. If all you're trying to do is just bear fruit on your own, you can only just manipulate people's perspectives as long as you're alive, but then as soon as you're dead, you can't do that anymore. Bearing fruit has to be done through the power of God at work in us. It's not something that we can just conjure or make happen. When we, I think actually that's enough of the point I was going to make. I was going to add another thing, but I think I just said that. What I want to do right now is I want to play a little game with you guys. It's not like a real competitive game. I'm just going to describe someone. It's going to be a famous person, and I want to see if you can figure out who this person is that I'm describing. I'll give you a couple hints. This person is dead. We're actually talking about legacy. So that narrows it down a lot. That really does narrow it down. So like you already have a little head start. This person is not alive anymore, and this person is male, so it's a him. And this person is famous. I would say most everyone has heard about this person. All righty, you guys ready to see if you can figure it out? All right, Abe Lincoln, we're already guessing names. All right, so this person was raised in a Christian, or it was a Catholic home, but this person identified his background as being Christian. As this man continued to grow, there were many, many documented cases in which he professed that he was a Christian. It was no secret. It was something that he talked about. He was actually regarded as one of the most influential leaders of his time. Billy Graham, maybe, okay. This man, when you look at what he was capable of doing, he actually accomplished a crazy amount of effect. I'm trying to just talk vaguely so I don't give it away. This person did not drink or smoke throughout his lifetime. He just had these convictions against it. And furthermore, I'm going to go ahead and give you a little hint on this one. He was actually a politician. So around the time that he was Martin Luther King, I think we're getting there. Okay, well, we'll just go for it. Around the time that we he was in his position of influence, they were discovering that alcohol has negative effects on pregnant women's babies, and that smoking was bad for children. At the time, it was kind of a common thing that kids would smoke because it was just a thing that they did. So he actually started leveraging laws to make sure that he's caring for children and unborn babies, because he seemed to genuinely care about people. Anyone have an idea who this person is yet? Ronald Reagan. Okay. Well, I'm going to keep going. He invested a lot of his own personal money and government money into caring for youth. He wanted children growing up to have the best opportunities, and so he invested a lot into helping young people. So he's liking children, he's liking pregnant women, he's liking children, or young teenagers, kind of like yourselves. And then he also cared for elderly people and disabled people, and he realized that they needed some medical assistance. So he actually created insurance policies and programs so that the weaker people in the community might be able to find help. And probably the next thing to show us what kind of a person he is, he loved animals, and he leveraged the power of his position to prevent animal abuse. Matter of fact, he became a vegetarian because he did not want an animal to be harmed on his behalf. Roosevelt. Who else? Any other ideas? So I'm painting a really good picture of some good kind of fruit. Would you agree? All right. Here's the next clue. You guys ready for this next clue? All right. This next clue. He was personally responsible for the murder of 6 million men, women, and children. Anyone have a clue who this guy is? Adolf Hitler. Someone knew it and just didn't quite get it out loud enough. I never heard one person say that. Okay, so here's the thing. Like I'm trying to get your attention. In case you don't know, Hitler was a leader in Germany in the 1940s, and while all of those people that he cared for, he truly did care for, he didn't care for all people. He took a very, very discriminatory stance against Jews, and he actually orchestrated the death of 6 million people, and that's just the Jews. This is horrific. He may have had a good reputation, but he had a horrible legacy. I mean, stop and think about this for a minute. How long do you think it would take to count to 1 million? So I actually did a little bit of research on this. There was a man who spent 16 hours a day over 89 days, counting 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, all the way up to 1 million. Now, when you start saying some really long numbers, it takes a long time to say every number. Another way of looking at it, if you took a picture of every one of those Jewish people who lost their lives because of Adolf Hitler and put them on a slideshow where you showed one face every second, nonstop, any idea how long it would take to look at 6 million photographs, 1 second each?
6 million seconds.
It would actually, 6 million seconds. It would actually take more than 2 months of nonstop pictures. It's hard to wrap your head around that. Imagine if we just started the slideshow tonight and didn't go anywhere, and we just watched it. We didn't sleep, and we just somehow stayed awake and observed it all. July 4th would have already come and gone. That's 2 months away. That's more than 2 months away. It's possible to have a good reputation, but a bad legacy. What we're talking about right now is legacy, something that outlives who we are. How on earth can the average 12 to 18-year-old person in the room practically do something about securing a legacy? That's a big question. It's a really, really, really big, weird question. But I got a really, really simple and very profound answer that I'd like to give you. And I think if you guys take this to heart, it is going to revolutionize. It has the power to revolutionize your life. There's a lot that's said about the character of Jesus in the Bible. By the age that he was 30 until 33, that was when most of the content that we have in the Bible about him was written. Then there's this chunk of stories about his birth. Christmas, wise men and shepherds and angels and Mary and Joseph and no room in the inn and all that kind of stuff. But from the time that he was kind of essentially newborn, after those stories happened, until 30 years old, there's only one single story told about Jesus. And I think God put it in there for us because of what we can draw from of lessons about Jesus just by watching this one single story of him as a 12-year-old, I think has the potential to really change some stuff for us. And we're going to read that together right now. All right, so this is from the book of Luke. Actually, we're just going to go ahead and skip this one. I think I made my point on that one. I realized I skipped right over that. I apologize. So we're going to go to Luke chapter 2, verse 41. Get there on that screen. Perfect. So every year, Jesus' parents went to Jerusalem for the festival of the Passover. And when he was 12 years old, they went up to the festival according to the custom. After the festival was over, while his parents were returning home, the boy Jesus stayed behind in Jerusalem, but they were unaware of it. Thinking he was in their company, they traveled on for a day. Then they began looking for him among their relatives and friends. When they did not find him, they went back to Jerusalem to look for him. After 3 days, imagine that, 3 days. Just pause for a second, just because you imagine you're the parents of Jesus. You know that you have the Son of God. You had one job, take care of God, and you lose him. Imagine, and then for 3 days. You've already been going for 1 day, and now for 3 more days, you can't find him. Oh my gosh, we're going to go down in history as the worst parents ever. Do you think they were a little stressed by the time they're finding Jesus? I'd probably say so. But after 3 days, they found him in the temple courts, sitting among the teachers, listening to them and asking them questions. Everyone who heard him was amazed at his understanding and his answers. When his parents saw him, they were astonished. His mother said to him, "Son, why have you treated us like this? Your father and I have been anxiously searching for you." "Why were you searching for me?" he asked. "Didn't you know I had to be in my father's house?" But they did not understand what he was saying to them. Then he went down to Nazareth with them and was obedient to them. But his mother treasured all these things in her heart. And Jesus grew in wisdom and stature and in favor with God and man. This brief little story of what happens when Jesus is 12 years old, I think is really important. And I want to just kind of make a couple of observations about this story, things that I think are important. The first one, if you go to verse 42, when he was 12 years old, why do you think it's important that Jesus was 12 years old? Do you think it's important that Jesus was 12 years old? I think it's really, really important. Yeah, this is an age where something is happening that everyone in this room can start to understand because everyone in this room is 12 years old with the exception of a couple of us. When you're a kid, you just kind of do whatever mom and dad do. You just kind of go along. But somewhere along the line, when you start becoming adolescent, teenager, puberty age, you start realizing that I'm my own person. And I want independence, and I'm going to be a grown-up one day, and I don't have to obey my mom and dad, and all this is kind of going on in your world. That starts roughly around the age of 12. The age of 12 is the season in your life that you can actually start to own your own faith. It doesn't have to be the faith of your parents anymore. It can become your faith. The staying connected to Jesus, fruit-bearing thing, it's not just because your parents do it and you're connected to your parents and your parents are connected to Jesus. No, you can be connected to Jesus all by yourself. And when Jesus was 12 years old, he starts having this owning his faith for himself moment. And for those of us that are in the 12-year-old age category, which is going to be all of us, or at least in that adolescent category, I think this is an important lesson that we need to stop and look at. Are we owning our own faith, or are we still seeing Christianity as like something that my parents do, or it's more just what I do and what I don't do? I don't go to that place. I do go to this place. I don't put that in my body. I do. I don't say those things. I do. Is that what it is? I hope not. If not, if that is what Christianity is for you, that's going to be the challenge of what does it look like to start to own that. Second observation, Jesus saw himself as a son of God more than he saw himself as the son of Joseph and Mary. We're going to go to verse 48 and 49. When his parents saw him, they were astonished, and his mother said to him, "Son, why have you treated us like this?" And here's where I love it. Mary pulls out the, "Oh, you wait until your dad gets home" card. She's like, "Your father and I." And she's making a point that we're the authority in this house. And Jesus' response, get this. He says in the next verse, "Why were you searching for me?" he asked. "Didn't you know I had to be in my Father's house?" Mary is saying, "Your father and I, Joseph and I, we're the authority here." And Jesus is saying, but God's my father, and I'm trying to follow him. Now, here's the beautiful thing. He's not being nasty to his parents. He's not being rebellious. You're just realizing that at this point in his life, he's owning this faith for himself. He's identifying with God as Father more than just what his parents have taught him. He's owning this for himself. And here's the next thing. He allowed his behavior to reflect this understanding. He took his own steps to pursue his own relationship with God. We're going to look at verse 46 through 49. And after 3 days, they found him in the temple courts. Where was he as he's doing this? He's in the temple courts, sitting among the teachers, listening to them and asking them questions. Let's just keep reading a couple more of these verses. Everyone who heard him was amazed at his understanding and his answers. Keep going. When his parents saw him, they were astonished. And so Jesus is there. He's doing the behaviors to pursue his own relationship. He's taking the initiative himself. This is important. If we're going to learn lessons about how to own our faith, let's draw our example from Jesus when he was our age. Next thing I want to kind of point out, the last observation is go back to verse 46. You guys tell me, what is he doing in the most practical, active sense? What is he doing in his attempt to own his own faith? Call it out. Here's my answer. You ready for it? He went to church, sat down in a small group with the small group leaders and his youth pastor, and he learned from them. Amen. Amen. Yes. So here's the point that I'm trying to make, guys, and here is such an important thing that we need to get. If we're going to own our faith, if this is going to be something we need to do, it's not hard. Here at North Point, we try to make it as easy as possible. We've got this Wednesday night thing called Journey, where you can come and we have fun and we eat nachos and we play games and we sing songs and we connect with friends. But we always have an opportunity for you guys at this stage of your life, as you're wrestling with faith, to do what Jesus did. Sit down with adults who care about you, and we just want to be a part of your life, and we want to pour out what we have to pour out. And if you want to own this faith, all you got to do is engage with us. Don't just listen to what we say, yeah, whatever. Think about it. Ask questions. Get curious. Learn. I don't like speaking for people. I think people can kind of speak for themselves, but I'm going to go out on a limb here. I'm going to speak probably, hopefully, for the general heart of the average small group leader in the room. There's a lot of other places that I could be right now. And there are other small group leaders as well. But I'm here every Wednesday. Not because I want a gold star on my name or a name tag or whatever. But no, I'm here because of you guys. I'm here because you're at this really critical, very important season where you're doing the most legacy-building thing that you could possibly do at this time of your life. You are owning your own faith. And I want to invest in that. I want to be here to be a part of that. I want to sit there and listen to you guys talk. I want to ask you questions. I want you to ask me questions, and I want to pour out what I have to pour out, because this is where where lives get changed. This whole idea of legacy feels so disconnected from my current reality. I mean, the idea of reputation feels difficult enough for me to wrap my head around. But legacy being something like reputation, but not just known for what I do, but somehow known for who I am and something that's going to last forever, that feels really complicated. But it's not. If you want to be connected to Jesus and bear the kind of fruit that lasts over time, it's not just a mere reputation, but a legacy. This is where it happens. In closing, I want to tell you about another famous person. See if you can guess who this is. This person also grew up in a Christian home. This person is also dead, and this person is a guy. And this person has several documented cases where he professes Christianity. But something really interesting about this particular person, when this person was just a child, Adolf Hitler was just gearing up to do the horrible things that he's doing. And this particular man that I'm telling you about went to school, where the Bible was still taught at school. And a teacher gave the class an assignment. Come up with a Bible verse. One that you could make it your life verse. Because we're going to memorize some Bible verses, and you guys get to influence what we're memorizing. Our small groups just did this. 20 verses every Christian should know was some of what we were looking at. This is what they did decades ago in the small classroom. I don't even know what city or state this was in, but it was in the United States. And so this young man took the challenge and went home and asked his mom, "Mom, can you help me find a verse that could be a life verse?" And he landed on this verse. Proverbs 22, verse 1. It simply says, "A good name is rather to be chosen than great riches, and favor better than silver or gold." This whole idea of a good name being more important than riches. It resonated with him. To have favor with people, that's better than silver or gold. And so he went to class and presented this verse to his teacher, and his teacher picked it to be the first one for the class to memorize. He was so proud of it. That started something very profound in this young man's heart, where he really started to own it. He didn't want this faith just to be the thing he did. He wanted it to be who he was. He wanted it to touch him on the level of identity, and he wanted his good name to be defined by what he believed in, who God was and what God was doing. And so it started to shape the way that he lived his life. As he grew up, he started a business. And the business kind of started to take off. And then there was a time that they kind of started to hit a rocky patch. And so he had always known that this mindset of a good name is rather to be chosen than great riches. He's starting to realize, hey, we're trying to make money here. We're trying to make our riches, but whoa, is this what's really most important? So he gets all of his business leaders together, and they sit down and they ultimately ask and answer this question. Who are we as a business? What is it that we're trying to accomplish? I know what my identity is in me that drives who I am, but what is the identity of this company going to be? And it took them 3 days to wrestle with the question of who are we? What is our identity as a business? Does anyone know who this is by any chance? Maybe. All right, so ultimately their answer. They wanted the business to meet, this is their purpose statement. We exist to glorify God by being faithful stewards of all that he's given to us. The idea that God's given us a lot, we want to take care of it well. And we want to have a positive impact on all who come in contact with us. That became the guiding light that defined who they were. Now, I think you guys have already guessed it. I'm talking about Truett Cathy. Truett Cathy is the inventor of the chicken sandwich. He's the founder of the Chick-fil-A restaurant. And Chick-fil-A is one of the most respected companies in our country right now. I work for them because I like who it is that they are. I like the idea of values being a part of what we do. Truett was just a man. I mean, I kind of started with some really, really extreme examples. Like I compared Hitler and then Jesus, and like, hey, where do you fall in between that? Like, gosh. But I think somewhere like a guy like Truett Cathy, we can land there. He was a human just like us. But the secret to his success, that all the fruit that he's borne in his life, and like Adolf Hitler, he's given millions of his own money to help children and elderly and disabled and struggling marriages and military and kids at summer camp and college students. I mean, he's just poured so much of who he is into the world around him, all in the name of Jesus. That's a legacy. And every one of us can have that kind of a legacy. That's who I want to be for me, and that's who I want for you to be. But guys, it all starts when we just answer the question, who am I? And at this season of your life, my challenge for you tonight is, are you owning your faith? Is it your faith? Or is it your parents'? If it's yours, let's go to small group and let's wrestle with it. Let's pray. Father, what an honor to stand here in this room with these young people. God, you're doing some really, really cool stuff in them. I'm amazed when I sit down and just with a high school young man, and when I listen to them talk and I see what you're doing in them, and I see your hand shaping them and maturing them and helping them to become young men of character and substance. It's so fun to watch. Lord, and I know you're doing that with all of the young people in this room. It's an honor to be here. Lord, I pray that tonight's message will sink in deep, that we'll be challenged to own our relationship with you for ourselves, that you will be our Father, and that you're not going to be our parents' God, but you're going to be our God and our friend. Thank you for what you're doing in us, Lord. Help us to learn more and grow more as we become more like you. And then, Lord, help us to bear the kind of fruit in our lives that you call us to, so that it'll be fruit that'll last. Help us to be known as people who don't just do good things, but we are good people bearing that kind of fruit.